recipes for enjoying more local food and drink. I am David Crowley, your host. On today's show, we'll be talking to Eric from Eat Like No One Else about eating local food when on the road. Eric started his website in 2009 to share what he was finding in grocery stores and cooking in his kitchen. The blog became his full-time job in 2018. In September of 2020, Eric, his wife, and 4 kids left their home behind to travel coast to coast in their camper. I look forward to what we can learn from Eric's experience. Hi, Eric. Welcome to Cook Local, Eat Local.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Eric. I think you're the first guest that I've had on so far that I've actually had at least a little bit of interaction with prior to having you on. So we're in a group together, blogging group that are bloggers doing podcasts and stuff. So it wasn't a big reveal when I saw what does this guy actually look like coming on the podcast. But anyway, I'm excited though, even though we've had a little bit of interaction, to go deeper because I know we have a lot of shared interests, but then you also have some, I think, unique experiences that you'll be bringing to the podcast. So look forward to hearing about it. And but before we delve into some of that unique aspects of your story, I was looking at a few interesting nuggets on your website, which is Eat Like No One Else, and you call yourself a reformed picky eater, and I thought that was an interesting phrase. So how picky were you to start with, and how did you go about reforming yourself on that regard?
So I call it this way because now I'm picky. I was picky before as a kid. Like I didn't eat a very wide variety of foods. I really struggled with it a lot. Like in social situations and going to places where I'm like, oh, I don't like anything to eat here, and so it was a big struggle. Like in my teenage, early 20s, just trying to, I just didn't like a whole lot of things. I don't know if it was because I wasn't exposed to many good flavors growing up here. Like my family's not known for, like, I don't have the cute story of my grandma sitting at my grandma's side, watch her cook. I don't have any of that really. We're like a big food family. So I didn't have a lot of good experience, I think, growing up here. And then I think there were just some fears of trying some new things. But eventually, I started struggle with that, getting over that, and wanting to like change and just starting to try new things. Actually, just watching like Food Network. We had Food Network for the first time when we had moved to this area where we've lived. After we got married, about 3 years after we got married, we got Food Network for the first time, and then I was watching Elton Brown a lot, and just like learning, trying different things, seeing like, he did this here. He made it very approachable. It wasn't like I wasn't ready for like really fancy dishes with like all sorts of ingredients, but he did things like very simple enough, very eloquently still, so that I started trying like new things and learn how I like stuff I didn't think I liked before. And so now I say I'm still a picky eater in some ways now, because now it's like, well, now I want something that's going to be higher quality. Like, before I don't know, I could never do this anymore, but like I would come home from school and eat like Kraft singles. Like those cheese. And like I couldn't even just plain. And I wouldn't even stomach that at all anymore. Like that would just be like disgusting. Or like, even like certain like fast food places like, oh, this used to be wonderful and delicious here. Like I'd be a treat to go to Burger King. And I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. So I say I'm picky. I go the other way now, where I'm like sophisticated picky instead of like starting as a kid picky. All
right, healthy picky, discerning, I think would be the word now, right?
Discerning.
Great. Oh yeah, so I know, and so you're not doing the Kraft singles or Burger King. Don't worry, neither of them are sponsoring this podcast, so that's cool. But you mentioned also that you've evolved to, you're not doing that, but going more for what's in season. So, which is obviously our sweet spot on this podcast. So, you want to talk a little bit about both in general for your family, but also for your website, how that seasonal eating comes into play.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of eating seasonally because for so many reasons. I mean, the flavor is better and the prices are always better. So we've learned to, in our family, we try to look out for the foods that are going to be in season, because I think like the grocery stores, like if you just shop at a grocery store, regular store, things are there all the time. There are strawberries there every day. There's asparagus there every day. there's certain, a lot of things are there every single day of the year, but like some of them just aren't good. So like, I've learned to like know like what's going to be the best thing to eat right now, like what's going to taste the best here,
Mm-hmm.
and we eat a lot of that. Like right now, if you look in we have like a fruit drawer, and in there right now you're gonna see stone fruit, you're gonna see peaches, you're gonna see nectarines, you're gonna
Yep.
see plums, stuff like that. You're not gonna see any citrus anymore. And right now it's a little too early
Mm-hmm.
for apples, so you're really not gonna see any apples in there right now. I mean, we have bananas for the kids to eat and stuff too, because that's I can't get seasonal bananas almost anywhere I go unless I go like the tip of Florida or something. So,
Yep.
but most part, yeah, we just learned how to like cherish stuff that's in season here, and that's when it tastes best, and just eat that when it's plentiful. Like I'll buy tons right now, buying tons of blueberries, and because they're
Yep.
here in
Oh yeah.
Michigan, so I'm eating those right now. I stopped eating asparagus just recently because now we had great local asparagus from the Midwest, that being the last month and a half, and then now the stores have switched back to asparagus coming from Peru. I'm not going to touch that anymore
Yeah.
because it's such a huge
Right.
letdown. I'll eat that asparagus maybe in March when I'm like saying, oh, I've had asparagus a long time, but like now I'm like, I can't do it anymore. Like, I just have good stuff. I'm not going back to, not that Peru can't go good asparagus, but when you're shipping stuff from so far away, it's not never going to be as good as when you're getting it like freshly picked within a week or so.
Yeah, totally. And I'm guessing I meant to sort of look at a map, but I think you in Michigan and where we are in New England, probably roughly similar. I guess if the latitude's similar, that, yeah, because we're same thing. Blueberries is what I'm getting them in my CSA now. The stone fruit, I probably is right around the corner of, definitely. So probably a lot of what you're grabbing is what I'm grabbing. But one of the themes we wanted to talk about is, in addition to what's seasonal where you are now, is one of our themes is, how do you eat when you're on the road, still finding seasonal food? Like I'm getting ready to go to South Dakota to visit relatives next week, and I don't know as well what to find when I'm out there to keep my seasonal eating, local eating values. But you have, and I know on a big endeavor, where you've developed a lot of expertise but first, before you get into your tips, you got to set up tell us, I don't want to steal your thunder. Tell us what you've been up to the last couple of years with your family.
Sure. So me and my wife had this dream about traveling the country. We wanted to travel more and do it in an RV camper type situation. We were really talking seriously about it when we were both very sick in December of 2019 with what we don't know what it was, and it was actually the same time COVID started in China. So it's one of those mysteries. Like, do we got? Who knows?
Right.
Anyway, we remember just being very sick and not being able to go anywhere. Of course, and like we were thinking about traveling. Of course, we were stuck somewhere, and and eventually a few months later, we would be really stuck again because of the start of the pandemic and stay-at-home orders and all those things where we couldn't go anywhere. So we really had this passion for we want to go see more places. We want to be able to travel more, and this is a great way to be able to do that. And so our landlord decided to say, "Hey, I'm gonna sell the place here. You're gonna have to leave." So that like, well, this timing works out here, so we could just transition to doing this right away here. We had places to store our stuff, and it was just working out to be perfect timing for it. And while the pandemic was still raging on at that point, we decided, yeah, we're gonna do this thing here. So we got a camper, we got a car to pull the camper here, and we took off in September of 2020. It took 2 months to head out to Southern California, where my wife's family lives. We're up there for a while. We've traveled a lot around since then. We've been on both coasts. We've in California. We eventually made it all the way up to Maine and New England last summer, and we went back to California again, and then we went around up to Utah and Dakota. So we've been all over the place. We've driven across
And you have a map
3 times.
Oh,
the whole length.
Oh, really?
3 times.
Wow.
800 plus.
Wow.
So we've seen that.
Yeah, I was going to ask. We're of course only doing audio, but we can see each other even though we're not recording. So I can see behind you. You're pointing out you have a colored map of all the states you've been to on this journey. What's the count at?
Let's see here.
Or estimate if you don't.
We're in the 30s. I mean, there's more states we've been to than we haven't been to. I personally have been to all 48 lower states. I haven't been to Alaska, Hawaii yet.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, we've been to good. The only places we really haven't been are South Carolina, Florida, and the Pacific Northwest, and then Oklahoma right in the middle. So
Yeah. Okay.
those are the only
Great.
places we haven't actually been yet with the camper.
Covering a lot of ground. So how have you kept to those seasonal eating values on the road? I mean, certainly some people when they're on the road, they do go to Burger King and other such, familiar chains where you're, needless to say, not going to be getting fresh local seasonal food.
Yeah. Whenever I go to a new town, it's definitely always looking for the farmer's market, trying to find where the farmer's market is. It can be a challenge sometimes too, because not all places do a good job of like having a good website or good contact information, and trying to find that it can be kind of a hunt sometimes. So I have to kind of I usually think the best way is not necessarily the website, but the social media. Like some farmers markets will update their social media a lot better than their website. So I try to go to that first to make sure.
Oh yeah.
Hey, does this farmers market still exist? Is it still in this location?
Right.
So that's usually good. Yep. Yeah, farmers markets are definitely big. And the nice thing is being able to travel the country, and we've spent time in southern states during the winter time, that I am being able to be outside of farmers markets all year round instead of being restricted in the winter. Now, granted, there are places that I don't know people realize this is some places do, even in northern states like Michigan. We have a farmers market in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They're all year round. They don't stop during the winter. It gets really cold during the winter, and they're out selling stuff. So, and things change, of course. I mean, you still have local products, you still have the bakery type stuff. You still have honey. You'll have some places will have apples. Will go cold storage for months and months, so they'll still be there. You'll still get some places do greenhouse type stuff, so you still can get some lettuces or your root vegetables, your onion, potatoes, and stuff. So you can get that kind of stuff year round. Depending on, not most markets don't do that, but there are several that I know that do have even in northern states they will do all year round. So you could check that. So
So one thing I'm curious about, you've traveled far and wide. So would you say at this point, from your experience, being able, I mean, the issue of finding the logistics aside, are farmers markets pretty similar across the country? I've been mostly just in my area, so I don't know if you see a lot of variation, or is a farmers market in the United States pretty similar wherever you go, would you say?
There are minor nuances, differences. Definitely in terms of the type of vendors you see and the different style of even selling things. Like, for example, out in California, they do a lot more sampling in terms of, especially with citrus. They do a lot of sampling with citrus. And there's people there that are just constantly cutting up samples all the time. So I see more of that in California. I also out there you see strawberries, for example, are sold more in flats everywhere. Whereas in other places in the Midwest, you may see that more, but you see a lot more individual packs of strawberries being sold at the market. So there's different nuancy things like that. In terms of products are similar. I mean, usually you go to a market, you're going to find the fresh produce. I mean, it'll be different depending on where you're at. Everywhere tends to have vegetables. Everywhere you go, you're going to have vegetables. Fruit's different. Fruit, in some areas, are not as good for fruit because there's not as good an area for having tree fruit or those things. That kind of changes. But you'll always see there'll be someone. There's almost always someone there with honey, with some local honey. There's almost always there's going to be meat vendors. They're usually there. There's always someone with baked goods. So that you'll see everywhere. So there's just different nuances. Different areas of what to expect, and sometimes certain ingredients are more popular in other places too, depending on where you're at. If you're in an area like California again or Texas, where you're going to have more of a Hispanic population, you're going to see ingredients more along those lines. You're going to see a lot more. People are going to be bigger into jalapenos and peppers and other things. They'll be bigger in certain, depending on the areas you're in. So there's the main differences. But everything has their kind of unique things. It was really cool last summer going up to Maine, going to a farmer's market and seeing someone selling lobster. So that was, because you don't see that in Michigan or anywhere else. I don't see someone selling lobster at the farmer's market. they have a
exactly.
little truck here, so so each area has their cool things. Like they have that Colorado, actually it was Wyoming, but really near Colorado border. They were outside roasting peppers in huge drums.
Oh, nice.
So you get that kind of
Like
smoke
the hatch
in here.
chili.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, that's
So you'll see more of those kind of things going on at different places. So that's neat.
yeah.
There's a lot of similarities, and you'll see the nuanced differences.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think we have, you'll see some good fish in our markets. I don't think we have lobsters here in the Boston area, probably occasionally. But anyway, that's interesting. So it is the fast food chains are out there, the farmers markets. They're locally driven, but it is a common denominator, I guess you can find traveling across the U.S. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. And I want to say too,
Now, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please.
besides the farmers markets,
Yeah.
I also look, because I also look for the little kind of mom and pop type stores, or
Mhm.
in recent years I've seen a lot more like, I call them like people kind of going back to the old neighborhood grocery store idea. There'll be like in
Oh,
a
yeah.
downtown area, you'll have like a little grocery shop here that'll have like
Yeah.
kind of cool, nichey, like local type products. I mean, usually they're more expensive type places. I mean, I wouldn't probably spend all my money at these kind of places, but they'll have like some kind of local products, whether that be like, like when I was up in Rhode Island, I got some salt that was harvested right out of the Atlantic Ocean. Um, so you'll find like all over the place. You'll find these little like shops that kind of popping up in little downtown areas, or so I try to look for those kind of places to try to source
Oh, yeah. That's a great idea.
local stuff, or even the chain stores will get like even like a huge chain like across the country like Kroger that has stores all over
Hmm.
the nation and with different names. Might be Ralph's where you live, might be Pick and Save, might be Smith's. They have Fry's, all sorts of different names. But even some of those stores, you could still go and they'll have like a little end cap at the end of the aisle, and they'll have
Yeah.
local products. So they'll have some like most time it's like barbecue sauce and jams and honeys and stuff here, and coffee sometimes. So you can usually find those like even some of the bigger stores will offer like a little like section like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. It seems like, yeah, and one thing I'm taking away from this is like if you're traveling with, and it's the best, I think of this more traveling overseas, but it's a great approach here in the United States, having that curiosity and sense of adventure. It sounds like you've brought that to your travels from what I'm hearing. Cool. Now, so you go and source these ingredients. I know your website obviously focuses a lot on, I know you have some stuff just assessing products, but you're also sharing. I know you cook them too, and you're not exactly dealing with a lavish kitchen when you're traveling in a camper. So, do you see? I'm guessing you have learned some things and have some approaches to how to cook good stuff. Use these kind of ingredients, and when you have kind of limited capacity. So, what are some of your approaches to doing that?
Yeah. So I'll share a story. I think kind of sums up well. We were in a campground in Tucson, Arizona, in that would be February of 2021. Um, each campsite at this campground had their own citrus tree. So some people would have
Mhm.
oranges, some would have grapefruit, some would have lemons.
Wow.
We had one set with the lemon tree, one with the grapefruit tree. So it was one night when I was doing so we had tons of lemons on this tree here. So obviously the thing is like, well, let's make lemonade, and I'm like, let's make some risotto. So like, let's put
Okay.
risotto. And I had some rice I picked up. It was a local rice, and we were in like the in Arkansas. Arkansas is a big rice producer.
Oh, okay.
So they were big into rice, so we had collected some rice from being there. So I did what I did is outside our camper I have this. So a lot of people use those like Coleman camp stoves that have like the propane little.
Oh, yeah. When I was a kid, we used
Yeah.
this. It had something like that.
Yes. So we don't do that because for me that's just the thing I having to replace those things all the time. So instead I have a induction cooktop, which if you're not familiar with those, it's kind of like a hot plate to start with here, but it's much bigger in size, and the cooking's done It's all magnetic, so it's a magnetic. No, I'm going to explain it very well, but it uses magnets to heat that. So you have to use magnetic
Huh,
cookware on it.
interesting.
So what I
Yep.
do is, so I have like, so most all our cookware is magnetic, so I can use on this thing. So I have cast iron, I have some stainless steel um,
Yep.
stuff. So I sell myself. So I got a table outside. I used the picnic table outside with an outdoor plug on our camper and plugged in with this induction cooktop. Got the cast iron out and was making the risotto. Had some chicken in here. This is one of those times I mentioned with the asparagus thing. There was actually decent looking asparagus at the store, and I hadn't had it in a long time. So definitely, and that was probably, I
Yeah.
think it was from Mexico at that point. But I like the thicker asparagus, not the thin asparagus. So this was actually, most
Okay.
you don't see the thick stuff unless it's local seam. So that's why I
Yeah.
asparagus. But I used those lemons off the tree, and kind of like
That's great.
made a risotto. Probably thinking like, I'm probably the only person cooking risotto here at the outside of the campground.
Yeah. Probably a safe bet. From my time in campgrounds, I haven't seen any risotto making. Wow. It's
So
really the gourmet
yeah,
guy in the campground. Now, that's actually, I know I've kind of touched upon your website, Eat Like No One Else. If this might be you obviously had that before you traveled. Like, to
mhm.
what? Can you give us a lowdown of some of the resources you can find on the site? Like, I don't know if you have stuff on there, like tips, like kind of equipment you use. Do you cover that, or is that sort of just
Yes.
something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just a little overview of what you.
Yeah, a lot about trying focusing on the best ways to cook things, as opposed to what I just growing up, seeing a lot of boiled vegetables. I mean, no wonder I didn't
Hmm.
like Brussels sprouts because they were boiled. They're
Oh yeah.
awful boiled and it smells terrible. So a
Hmm.
lot of that's early started out with just like learning how to cook things better, like the better way, not the convenient way always, but the way that tastes better. Sometimes it's still convenient. I mean, like the Instant Pots come out. I mean, when
Hmm.
I started in 2009, so there was no Instant Pot, there was no air fryer. We didn't have those things
Hmm.
back then. So I've had as new technologies come out, I've adapted and added those in as long as I felt like they were going to be like longer term trends. Um, so I
Hmm.
really try to teach people like how to what's the best way you can cook something. What methodology is better, that'll get you good
Hmm.
results still. And even if it's
Yeah.
more time consuming, I always try to focus on that. And they've always been big on focusing on um, different types of ingredients that aren't like the normal
Hmm.
things to use here. Like just simply like
Hmm.
something simple like sesame seeds. Like I have a post I
Yeah.
talk about different types of sesame seeds besides just the standard ones you see on those aforementioned Burger King hamburgers. Like
Oh
the
yeah.
tan
Right.
sesame
Right. Right.
seeds. There's black ones and tan ones and white ones. There's different. So I talk about the different varieties of that. So yeah, and variety is a huge
Hmm.
thing. I'm always like talking about different types of fruits, and so I do tons of different reviews of just all the different types of fruits that I find out there, different varieties, and say hey, try this one out, to encourage people to go beyond just the normal variety, or get beyond just living in a world where it's just green and red grapes. There's varietals out
Right.
there that you can buy. That's actually been exploding over the last decade, where there's now a lot of those going on, or learning about that there's actually, I think a lot of people didn't even know that there's actually different types of peaches besides just like yellow and white, and I mean not
Hmm.
donut peaches and stuff here, but there's like different varietals. So teach people, hey, you go to the grocery store one week and say, oh, these peaches are terrible, and then the next week find them, oh, these are
Hmm.
really good. Well, you could have probably had two different varietals and didn't know it. So because they don't like,
Yeah.
advertise that like apples, where apples are just where we do actually focus on that. I mean, and apples are more different characteristic wise in flavors
Hmm.
and stuff than
Hmm.
peaches are, but still there are still nuanced differences that people like better than that. So I do a lot about talking
And
about those type of things.
great. One thing I was going to say on that topic is and my sense is that at least some of that variety comes from the more variety is some of that's going to maybe in a local area is going to have a certain kind of varietal peach or I know like tomatoes, you start seeing that kind of concept a little more now,
Mm-hmm.
like heirloom tomatoes, but like you're pushing people to get beyond in apples, like you said, but almost anything, I guess, is going to have more variety if you seek it out.
Yeah, so I'm big on like trying to, and I'm trying, and recipes and trying to cook with different types of things because you're going to get different flavors and different outcomes from trying different ingredients and doing that. So like I became really big at searching that out because my original thought was like I don't understand the apple varieties in the store. Like I don't know what's good for baking and
Mm-hmm.
cooking and stuff here. So I went out to learn that myself and then started sharing that information. So kind of started with apples
Yep.
and then it spread to all the different types of fruits here. So
Yeah.
and then, so now I got an eye in the grocery store. Like I will seek if there's something new there. I will find it. Like I will find out the new variety in the store. So
Nice.
that's something I really focus on doing is knowing like the different things and being able to share with people. Hey, I found this in the store here because people, like I take my time when shopping. Some people may be rushing through and looking for certain things, and I'm doing that. So I try to find
Yeah.
those things so I can say, hey, when you go to the store, look for this now. So that's something I really
Mm-hmm.
doing.
That's cool. And I know you touched upon apples, and I know I definitely wanted to cover and talk to you because I know you've got, you're probably I don't know if you're one of the greatest apple varietal experts. It sounds like people, I understand a lot of people get your site that way. One thing I wanted, so I guess one thing I want to talk about in that regard is I always found my family would love to do a tradition of going apple picking. New England's good for apples and stuff like that, but we always seem to hit it too late. And I think apple season maybe starts a little earlier than I think of it. So, like in a northern climate, whether it's around you in Michigan, or maybe I'm guessing it's probably similar to here. When do you start looking for those fresh local apples? Does it depend on varietal? So any tips on
Yes.
when we can start? Because this episode is going to air in early August, so I'm not sure how close would be to seeing local apples at that point in the northern part of the country.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think like in terms of like timing, like most of the places that grow apples are all kind of located in a similar area here. You might see little 1 to 2 week sways here and there, but you're like there's a I don't think no one's growing apples in Florida. So there's so most of it's stuff like
Right.
like when I went traveling last fall, I know we saw apples in Virginia and Tennessee, and we started getting south of Georgia. That kind of went away at that point. Tennessee wasn't as good as Virginia, so most of it's kind of in the same time frame. As to the start of the season, in right now in mid July, as we're recording this episode, there are local apples available right here in Michigan in mid July.
Oh wow!
So there's a couple.
Surprising to me.
Yes, in the very beginning, there's a couple of apples. One's called Transparent. One's called Lodi. They're very similar. They are green. They're a green-skinned apple. They are extremely tart and very fragile. They actually the only apple I've ever seen actually crack. They will start cracking and go bad like super fast and getting really, really soft and really fast. They do not last very long. So you don't ever see them in a grocery store unless that grocery store is a really like farm-focused grocery store. They actually make the best applesauce of the entire year with them.
Really?
Yeah. So because of their ability to break down really nice, so they break down super smooth and make a really like good textured applesauce. You do have to add some sweetener to it because unless you can really handle the extreme tartness of it, but so that starts in so even in like July you can start seeing some apples coming into season, just like those type. When we get into August, then we start seeing some more apples coming in, and that's usually August is the first time I go to an apple orchard. Like I start then before the kind of like the Labor Day, September fall rush. Like there's a time period in August where you start seeing like varieties starting to come in. You usually don't see them as much in the grocery store, depending on the store you go to. There's some where you might be able to find some of these local ones. But usually they're still, in the beginning, they're still pretty tart. Like a lot of the varieties coming out are tart. They're going to go soft fast. They're not going to be very good keeping apples. So you occasionally get a couple. Like there's the one called the Gravenstein, which comes out in August. And they actually, they have a huge festival for it in California. So it's one of the
Oh,
apples
really? Huh.
they still grow out there, and it's one of the best tasting apples if you get it at the exact right time from a good grower. Like I had them last year, and they were terrible.
Yeah.
Some picked them too
Oh.
early, so you have to
Oh,
get
okay. Gotta get
the
them at the
right
right
time.
time. Yeah.
I know there's an orchard in Ohio that always does it just perfectly right, and they're so delicious. Really,
Hmm.
also really great for applesauce, and they're very juicy and good balanced flavor. So you can find things like that popping up in
Hmm.
August. So I start looking like at your local apple orchards in that time of year. Now most places I found won't they're not doing you pick apples in August because they only have
Okay.
like
Yeah.
small certain varieties of stuff here, and it's kind of a start things. But they're still, and usually they don't even make cider until like September when the right types of apples come out for doing cider blends.
Yeah.
But usually, yeah, you can start checking
Hmm.
apple orchards in August, and start giving them some of your business for these early ones, especially if you like making applesauce. Like August is like actually my favorite time. August, early September is when I like to make my applesauce first, and then into
Oh,
October,
okay.
the better apples for pies and cobblers and all that stuff come out. So I do that more like that time of year. And plus, by then it's
Yeah.
cool outside, and I'm okay turning the oven on. I don't like doing that
Right. Right.
when it's 95 degrees out. So kind of balance out. So yeah. So I say start looking for apples in August. Check with your local orchards. Do a Google search. Sometimes you may find orchards you never heard about before because maybe
Yeah.
you don't buy them or they don't advertise as well. So that's something I'm looking for is trying to I spend a lot of time looking up orchards and trying to find at this point I'm looking for apples I've never had before, which for me is a search. It's no longer I just go to
Okay.
the farm and find them. I'm like searching, trying to find
Yeah.
new ones I haven't found because I think last year I had over probably 100 varieties. I think
Wow.
I was keeping
Nice.
a sheet and marking down how many I could find in a season from travel
Okay.
orchards. So yeah, so definitely
That's fun.
August is a start. September you can definitely go. It is definitely a good time too, and then even into October. It all depends on the orchard too. Like some orchards will
Yeah.
end earlier, some will go later. Some will stop you pick and they'll still have apples available. But like I found
Right.
like
Right.
if you can find a place that has them in October, is a good time to stock up because it tends like the apples that stay on the tree longer and are picked later in the season end up usually not. It's not necessarily it's not a hard rule, but it's a general rule I would say. End up lasting a lot longer, so you can
Oh, that's interesting.
have a whole bunch. Yeah, so usually the apples you get in October will last for months and months. If you store them right. I mean, that's how we get our apples in our grocery stores because they end up like being stored for many months. Some
Right.
varieties actually are stored for 2 to 3 months and then sold for the first time because they're
Yeah.
so sharp and so tart that they actually mellow in flavor. Like if you had
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I once ate a pink lady off that was freshly picked in October, and it was the most like tart apple. I couldn't even
Oh, really? Huh.
because it needs a couple of months to kind of like mellow out, and like some of
Hmm.
the starches kind of convert to sugar more. So it's
Hmm.
still more on the tartar side of apples, so on the tart sweet spectrum. But like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
unbearable in October. So
Wow. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. So you really, really are an Apple maven for sure. So I can't believe we've been chatting. We could probably chat another half an hour, but
I'm sure.
we've covered a lot of ground. We might have to have you back on to pick up on some of these themes. But before we wrap up, I mean, you started talking a little bit about your website, but can you recap again where people can find you on the web? Maybe your website, any social media where you're
Sure.
active, and if there's any key thing on your website that you haven't had a chance to mention that you direct them to if they're first time visitors.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the website address is eatlikeNoone.com. So you just go there. On my main page, I have like a what do you want to learn today search box here. So if there's something you're looking for, you can type in there and see if you find the answer. But then if you don't, you can always reach out to me because I love when people say, hey, ask me questions about things they want to learn because
Yep.
that's content I want to make, and I will try to do that when I can. Also, Instagram. So eat like no one else on Instagram. That's what I use the most. I don't really do much with Facebook. But Instagram, I'll post like stories. I'll do a lot of sharing different things I'm finding in the store, saying, "Oh, I found this in the store," store today, and you should check this out. So I do a lot of posting on stories and trying to share different things in there and give little tips. So that's the best thing. And I also send out a weekly or a couple of different email newsletters you can search from on my website and go to and get some email updates about what's in season. So I try to really focus on setting out the stuff that's relevant for right now.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. Well, I can see, obviously, just from what you've said here, you have a lot, very resourceful, and the website is a great resource for people who want to learn more in general about different kinds of food, or it's a good place to go for a very specific question, especially in part based on your offer to potentially help find an answer if you don't already have one too. So I love the curiosity and enthusiasm for exploring both not only the map of the US, but the map of all the food that's out there in this country. So it's been great, Eric, having a chance to catch up, and glad you're getting to maybe relax a little now that you're back from your travels. But it's been fun.
That's great talking. Love talking about fruit and all that fun stuff, and tell people to get out there and just explore and try. And just maybe you can't go every week here, but it's good to when you can just check out that market and see what's out there.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cook Local, Eat Local. To get the show notes with links for recipes and resources we covered today, go to cooklocaleatlocal.com to get the podcast landing page. And please be sure to subscribe to Cook Local, Eat Local wherever you get your podcasts. Make it a great day with some tasty local food on your plate.